What if we lived in a place where value exchange worked a lot different than what we're used to? And by this, I mean where maybe you go somewhere and you think you've got quite a bit of cash that you plop down on the table, thinking you can trade that for something of enormous value. Then you find out that it's not worth as much in this new place as it was in the place that you came from, and how this reset of what we think is valuable can totally reframe the way that we see ourselves and the way that we see other people. What do you think about that? Well, come on in. I've got something I really want to share with you today. Welcome to you, my friend. I am D. Grant Smith, the growth farmer for personal development through the lens of spirituality and storytelling. And I've got something really special for you today. On this channel, there's a lot of awesome stuff, especially if you are into manifestation, law of attraction, law of assumption, philosophy, spirituality. Man, there's so much stuff we talk about. Uh, Basically, it's all about becoming the best version of ourselves. So that's what I'm here to share with you. And I like to share a lot of storytelling too, to add a different kind of dynamic to the way that we look at ourselves and the way that we look at our personal journeys. One of my favorite ways of teaching and showing you what I'm learning and us growing together is by pointing to stories. And some of those stories are things that I've seen on film, and I make references to movies that you might not have seen before, or you might not have seen it the way that I'm seeing it. And so it adds a different sort of dynamic. And I also like to share stories that I've written that are ways of me just talking about the things that I'm learning about and reinterpreting teachings that I've heard from other people like Neville Goddard or Joe Dispenza or Dr. Wayne Dyer, Abraham Hicks, or there's a whole bunch of people I'm reading. And I take their teachings and I retranslate that over into stories. So that's actually what I have to share for you today. And if you want even more of my stories, I've got some really awesome and dynamic short fiction novels that you can read and listen to at the same time. One purchase, two cool things at the same time, and it's all at growthfarming.com. So here's what I have to share with you guys for today. It's a story that I wrote actually a week or two ago. I had this idea when I was making breakfast. And this is the way some stories come to me. I get these little scenes that pop in my head, and I just let the scene play out. And if it's interesting enough, when it's over with, I will sit down and write it. And as I'm writing it, I'm seeing that the story is teaching me things that I hadn't really considered before, or giving me something new to think about, or a different perspective to add to something that I am currently trying to process or understand on a deeper level. And so, one of the things that I've been focusing a lot of my attention on lately has been abundance. And I've been thinking about things from a combination of philosophy and spirituality and understanding scripture a little bit differently than I have in the past. But it's made me wonder about the way that we understand what it means to live in a vibrant and abundant kingdom. And so I have this book right here. Um, it's called Write the Story. I've shared with you guys some stories from this book a few times, but I opened the book up and it gave me a title and it gave me some keywords, and then this uh, idea that I'd had kind of came into more clarity. And so I decided to write it in that book. But I've got it written on my computer and I'm going to share it with you here and just kind of challenge you a little bit to maybe think about abundance from a different perspective, more so than just dollars and cents or the way that we tend to think about monetary exchange. And you'll know exactly what I'm talking about as we get into the story. And then I've got some thoughts about what this story represents, and I'll share that with you when we get to the end. And also ask you to share with me what your thoughts are on this story. And if it's challenged you or maybe changed your perspective on things in a different way, you can always leave a comment below and share that with me. I love connecting with people. I've titled this story Big Time Deals in the Big City, but here's what the story is. They traveled for 3 days in a foreign land, mostly through deserts and mountain passes, before they came to a precipice. A bridge over an unknown dark spot led immediately into a large and vibrant city, like reaching Mecca or a metropolitan oasis. It wasn't hard finding a place to park. The challenge was in deciding which skyscraper to go into. The whole city was gigantic buildings as though there had been some massive feud amongst real estate tycoons on outdoing each other for control of the market. None of them chose to be complacent in this. The group of travelers chose an elegant and inviting place to go into that had a marquee across the top that read, "The Palace." This place had everything, and it was all for sale at insane prices, as though money had no value. But the real scandal, to the leader of the pack, was what he would discover as he sat behind the bar in the middle of the main hall and ordered a drink. A patron sitting to his right put down 8 pieces of silver on the bar and was given currency notes of incredible value along with several parcels of land and servants. Basically, this person became a millionaire and then some. The leader of the pack laughed to himself. He carried 100 pieces of gold on him. He reasoned that he'd be treated like a king here, given his own castle and maybe even his own army. He called to the bartender and winked at him. He pulled out his gold coins and stacked them in 10 rows of 10 coins each, and asked what castle he could take in exchange. The bartender lifted one finger and told him this amount of gold would afford him 1 horse and carriage. What? That man gave you 8 pieces of silver for a small fortune, and all this gold only grants me a horse and carriage? You are unreasonable. Who's in charge here? The leader of the pack demanded. I am. I am the king, the bartender replied. The leader of the pack looked at the bartender incredulously. You traveled here for days, maybe longer, across an endless desert to find yourself here in my kingdom. Real wealth isn't a matter of coin, but of true value. The man who traded silver for currency provides the entire kingdom with tremendous value in his services, his heart, and his love, and he is justly rewarded for it. I have a different philosophy on wealth and money than the rest of the world. Besides, gold, it's just pretty to look at. It has no real application aside from aesthetics. Silver, on the other hand, has a multitude of uses and functions. Therefore, it is of much greater value to me and to this kingdom. This might not be what your mind can handle right now, and if so, that is okay, but it's still the way it is. The bartender king replied stoically. The leader of the pack sneered again. Whatever you say, Mr. Bartender King. Tell me, who's really in charge? Let me speak to your manager, he said in a sarcastic, stark tone. Look, Homer, you can crawl out of here, or you can take the horse I offered you. Your attitude just lost you the carriage. And I always serve new guests who enter the kingdom with a free drink and meal. I have given you a royal welcome. What you choose to do with it is your business, the king stated clearly before returning to tend to his other patrons. The leader of the pack sat there flabbergasted. He'd never heard anything this ridiculous in his entire life of travels from city to city, nation to nation. But that wasn't the strangest thing that was said to him, he suddenly realized. Wait, how do you know my name? Homer asked. Now, there's a lot to this short story that stood out to me. I've been thinking a lot about what it means to be the king of a kingdom. And I wonder about that for several reasons. And I'm not going to get into all of that, but one of the things that is talked about in scripture is the first will be the last, and to be the greatest is to be the least. And I think about that from the realm of there's so much talked about in scripture about the kingdom, and so much talked about in terms of King David and the way that he ran his kingdom. And I started wondering, part of what this scene was I imagined somebody being at a bar and putting down some silver coins and being given a ridiculous amount of fortune for that, and somebody else putting down gold and not being given very much, because when you get down to the brass tacks of everything, no pun intended, silver can be used for a variety of reasons and a variety of purposes. And gold is really just used for jewelry and things that look good. It doesn't really have much of an application outside of just being something that is pretty to look at. But silver is different. And it made me wonder, who decided that gold was more valuable than silver? Is it somebody that said that there's less gold in the world than silver? Or or any other thing that we would barter in exchange for services or in exchange for money? And then that got me thinking about a king or a kingdom that reprioritizes and revalues the way that we even look at each other. Because here's a thought. There could be in any small community 3 or 4 businesses that do the exact same thing, but they pay their employees completely different. And what is it that actually determines the value exchange if all people at all of the businesses are actually delivering the same quality of work? Is it the mindset of the person that is running the business that determines what it is that they pay their laborers? Or is it based on some sort of other criteria? And all of this thinking can change the way that we look at even our own monetary policy as local communities or nations or the world. And even the way that we look at abundance. And again, abundance has been something that I am giving a lot of thought and a lot of consideration to, and really leveling up my own consciousness when it comes to thinking about monetary things. And I recognize within myself that I have unconsciously repeated a very negative story about money and about value and about work and about exchange for services and whatnot for a very long time. And I blamed other people for not giving me what I felt was fair. But I recognize after reading Neville and reading so many great teachers that it's all a matter of my own consciousness. And so I, for the long time, had the attitude that Homer has in this story that if I make a lot of money, then that is what determines the worth and the value. And I'm shifting into having a different kind of consciousness that's not based on an amount of money to earn or amount of money to gain, but really based more on what value is being provided and what value is being exchanged, and also what am I valuing myself as. And so I am in the process of shifting from operating from the way that not a direct way, but in kind of the way that Homer in this story saw what currency and what value is, over shifting into the way that the king of this kingdom operates. Because what's also interesting is the king of the kingdom works as a bartender at this one bar inside the palace, and he welcomes every visitor that comes in with a free meal and a free drink and doesn't ask anything in exchange. But he also sees value exchange completely differently. And I thought of this kind of as like, what would King David do if he had a palace? And what would his invitation be to visitors coming in? Would they be required to give him something? Or would, because abundance is the way that not only David operated from, but King Solomon, his son, operating from, so much abundance that just things were given away, but there was a different perspective to be had for the way that the kingdom was run. And so that's really what this story is all about for me. And those are some of the lessons that the story taught me as I was writing it and as I've been thinking about it. But I'm curious what your thoughts are about this story. And I'm curious if there's anything else that stands out from what I've shared with you, both from what I've shared from the story and what I've shared with you from my own perspectives on things, and what you think about what it means to transition from kind of the matrix of the way that we operate in this world of ours into more of an abundance consciousness and what that might actually look like. Please comment below and share with me what your thoughts are. I would love to hear them. And I invite you once again to get more stories and teachings and insights and deep dives, and join into the community of awesome, vibrant, amazing people who are doing what it is that I talk about: growth farming, love from within, becoming the best version of ourselves, and growing in this process through the power of support and community and accountability and encouragement and empowerment. And those membership options for you to join into the work that I'm doing and the work that my community is doing is available at growthfarming.com, along with all of those stories and teachings and courses and awesome stuff. I encourage you and invite you to come in and join into this beautiful, wonderful opportunity to grow love and abundance with me. All right. I appreciate you. I love you, and I'll see you again soon.